Syracuse football 2027 recruiting is off to a hot start. The Orange recently added 2 more players to its 2027 class, and we're going to dive into both of them in just a moment. But first, a couple of quick disclaimers here. And it's a classic case of 2 things can be true, because I know that we're talking about the 2027 recruiting class, so I already can kind of predict what some of you are going to say, because you know what? This is not my first podcast here on Locked On Syracuse. So number one, I acknowledge that this is very early, that this is the class of 2027. These guys cannot theoretically sign with Syracuse football, or actually sign with Syracuse football, I should say, until December of 2026. We're currently in September of 2025. That is a year and a half from now until these guys can potentially sign. I know that these are verbal commitments, and verbal commitments at the end of the day are not signed paperwork. It is just a verbal commitment. Okay? I acknowledge that. But also, verbal commitments, especially in the Fran Brown era, are not meaningless. Syracuse football, much more often than not with Fran Brown, have been able to hang on to their verbal commitments. And we've done plenty of podcasts, especially over the offseason, documenting how under Fran Brown with Syracuse football, if you leave out the 2024 class, if you just talk about the 2025 one, it's about 90%. Reason why 2024 is weird is because that's skewed due to a head coaching change, where a lot of guys are going to decommit than otherwise would, because you build a relationship with the previous coaching staff. Then there's a new coaching staff that comes in, causes a lot of guys to decommit and go elsewhere. Relationships. That's one of the most important pillars of football recruiting and recruiting in general in college sports. But this is not meaningless. First off, let's acknowledge that I think we would all rather have the verbal commitment than not have the verbal commitment. So I'll take the verbal commitment, even if at the end of the day, it's just a verbal one. And number two, in the same breath where I say, look, 2027, it's a long ways away until these guys can sign. Let's also acknowledge this, that in December, most, if not all, of Syracuse's 2026 recruiting class is going to sign. And once those players put pen to paper and they sign with Syracuse, as well as plenty of players around the country signing with their respective schools, then what? We're going to be talking about the class of 2027. So even though it's early, it may not be as early as you might think. In other words, it gets late early in recruiting. With that being said, let's go over the 2 most recent commits of Syracuse football, both happening within the past 48 hours. Number one, you got Davion Crumity. I apologize for any name mispronunciation. He is 5'11", 160 pounds, an athlete from Florida, currently rated as a 3-star prospect, but he is the 21st best athlete in the country per Rivals industry ratings. And he is also rated as a top 400 player overall on 24/7 Sports. So this is a very high-end 3-star, could maybe become a 4-star pretty soon. He chose Syracuse over Georgia Tech, Pitt, UCF, and Illinois. Then you got Tristan Hughes, who also is a pretty highly rated prospect. We'll get to that in just a moment, because the rating for him on 24/7 Sports just came out for Tristan Hughes. 6'1", 190-pound athlete from Ohio, rated as the 32nd best athlete in the country per 24/7 Sports, and also a top 400 player overall in the country over on that site. He chose Syracuse over Bowling Green, Mass, Eastern Michigan, Kent State, Miami, Ohio, and Toledo. I imagine for Tristan Hughes, he's going to be getting a lot more offers over the next few months and possibly over the next year. So let's wrap up 2027 football recruiting and how it's off to a hot start here. Syracuse, according to 24/7 Sports, they have 6 commits in their 2027 recruiting class. You got Stanley Montgomery, Travis Miles, Davion Crumedy, Tank White, Justin Dixon, and Tristan Hughes. All 6 of these players are rated top 500 in the country per Rivals industry ratings. For some context behind that, Syracuse in their 2026 recruiting class, which was a very strong recruiting class, the strongest of the Fran Brown era so far, they had 5 players in the top 500. Well, Syracuse in 2027, they already have 6. They are 6 for 6 getting top 500 players over on Rivals industry ratings. So 2027 football recruiting is off to a nice start. Yes, it's early, but it's off to a pretty good start. And you'd rather get off to a good start than a poor start, right?